Hey guys, how you doing? As you know, I'm always looking for new subjects to discuss and talk about. And so the gentleman who responded to one of my other videos about the benefits of ecological training. So now there's a little bit of a movement in jiu-jitsu, and there's some people who are exclusively training without drilling. Well, first of all, I haven't been to an ecological school to see how they work. I've watched some videos, I've seen some stuff online and things like that. I've listened to a few audio books about that approach of training and the science behind it and things like this. And so I consider myself a pretty open-minded person when it comes to coaching. Again, I've had elite level coaches since I was very young, like national selectors, Olympians, all sort of stuff, and not just in martial arts, in tennis and table tennis and all those sorts of things. I played a lot of different sports at a pretty high level. And then my martial arts coaches, again, national selectors, national representatives, international competitors. In jiu-jitsu, obviously my coaches are some of the top guys in the world and most experienced coaches in the world. So even if, and I'm not, as I said, I think that variety is important. Yeah, so in my academy, for example, I don't have a fixed methodology of training, because I think that spells doom for just about everybody, especially the poor coach, right? Because let's face it, the coach is there more than anybody else, right? And so there's generally a top-down effect. However the coach feels about things is generally the vibe of the club and his persona and attitude towards training or methodology about training filters down through the rest of the academy, and people either like it or they don't, they stay or they leave, a lot based on that, So when I first started my own school, I had to think very deeply about what the culture was going to be, what my attitude was going to be. And I thought very deeply about all the coaching I've had in my life and the most significant coaches and how each of the coaches was different, what I liked about them, what I didn't, and things like this, and tried to come up with a methodology or a culture, I guess is the word, a culture that is fun and isn't always about hard training, about friendship, and mostly avoiding boredom. The number one reason why people leave jiu-jitsu, other than injury, is they simply get bored. The training's not interesting, they stop having fun, right? So I don't just drill, and I don't just do ecological kind of stuff, game playing things. I do both. Every single day, every single warm-up is different. Yeah. So the one thing I dislike the most is you turn up to an academy, the warm-up's been the same for the last 10 years. It's the same every day. So if you train 4 or 5 days a week and you always start with push-ups and lunges and sit-ups and exactly the same stuff, all you're doing is wrecking your body and only training your body to be strong on those particular movements and exercises. And it shows a great level of inflexibility from the coach. And in my personal opinion, I think a coach that does stuff like that just really doesn't care, right? He's just this is the easiest thing to do. It's what we've always done, so we'll just keep doing that. I'm not interested in trying to change anything, right? So, for example, as I said in that previous video, it's I get a lot of the people, and even teenagers these days. I get some really obese teenagers, and I get lots of guys over 40, pre-existing injuries. I get guys over 50. I get guys over 60. Yeah. And my personal attitude always used to be about, very hard training and rolling and stuff. Being a part of Holy Gracie's team for a long time, they train very, very hard. It's very, I don't want to say competition focused, because it's not like the way competition is now. It was a very competitive environment. So you would fight hard and train hard, and whether there were strikes involved or not, the intensity was pretty much the same. And so, of course, there's a top-down effect, right? So that's the way that my coach did things, that's the way that I did things, and it suited the environment that I was in, and so it was successful. But after breaking my back and stuff like this and my neck, and then coming back after a layoff, then my attitude towards jiu-jitsu had changed dramatically, and I started to understand what it was like for someone starting over with an imperfect body, yeah, who was weak, who wasn't, functioning correctly and stuff like that. And so then I took on like a private student at home. You might have seen his videos. His name's Rain, and so I started documenting his very first classes and early classes and stuff like that, and even just the simple drilling that we did, yeah, and it was just pure drilling, yeah, a little bit 5-minute stretching at the start, a little bit of movement, and we would just drill. And he was like, I'm going to say he was like 28, right? 20, 28, 30-ish, somewhere around there, early 30s. I should know Rain's age, but I don't. Almost every day he was out exercising. He wasn't overweight at all. He wasn't unfit. He's like a 30-year-old guy, goes running, does chin-ups, push-ups, sit-ups, all this sort of stuff, likes to stay fit. And just after a day of just drilling, not even a day, we'd do it for like an hour, yeah, just drilling, basic stuff, no stress, no resistance. When I saw him 2 days later, he was complaining he was still sore from it. And that continued for months, right? And I was like, wow, like I'd never thought about that before, yeah? And I'm like, if a young, fit, healthy guy like that feels that sore, and he himself even said, sometimes I didn't feel like turning up on Thursday if we trained on Tuesday because I was still so sore. I did explain to him the science behind movement, helping your recovery and stuff like that. So I convinced him to come on Thursdays. But for months, he was still sore just from drilling, because using your muscles in a different way than you're used to puts quite a bit of stress on you, and he's young and fit and athletic and stuff. So for guys who are 40 plus or 50 plus, right? Most of mine are like over 35, over 40, many of the guys. They come in with pre-existing injuries, 10, 15 kilos overweight at least, and haven't exercised for 5 years or more. So the idea of them getting in and even just like flow rolling and starting to move organically like that without any sort of parameters set around that. I mean, of course they're going to set parameters when they do ecological stuff, and I'm not shitting on it, but I'm just saying that even for those guys doing really simple movements, yeah, like that was like really painful for them the next day. And so, as I explained in my response to the gentleman, is that even the Navy SEALs, and I look at warfare a lot, I look at how the very, very best soldiers and stuff work. How do they operate? And they would be the first to tell you they are all about drilling. Yeah, like you have to perfect your movement. And I think that that's where there's a misunderstanding about what drilling is. Drilling isn't like one thing done by one person or by a group of people repeatedly over and over. And even, I was thinking about it a little bit this morning, is that even an ecological approach where, let's say you're trying to pass the guard, for example, right? And you've been given some parameters on roughly how to do that. Okay, this is your end goal. This is where you're going to start. Try and make your way through this, right? If you start doing that over and over, working through it, guess what? You're drilling. Yeah, right? You are drilling. Unless you just roll and flow through all different sorts of positions repeatedly. If you're just looking at a specific position for even 5 or 10 minutes, and you've got your ecological approach, your game plan approach, and you're repeating that process, that's still drilling. It's just not drilling in the term that's been used previously, where it's like hold this and then move this step by step by step by step. But in your head, that's still what you're doing. Yeah, right? Anyway, so the way that I approach coaching, and I've been coaching for a very long time, and I take it very, very seriously. I still spend 2 or 3 hours every day learning about human psychology, learning about how we think, how we learn, how we perceive the world and stuff like this. And if I'm going to be perfectly honest, the gentleman who responded, who said drilling is rubbish, yeah, it's an absolute waste of time, because I like the ecological training, yeah, and these are the results that I've had, so therefore drilling is a waste of time. That person with that kind of attitude, in my opinion, would make a horrific coach, because they're not open to like variations, and they're just closed-minded, like this is the only way because this is what works for me. And that's not what coaching is about. Coaching is about going, okay, I get in the same class, I'll have a 13-year-old, 25 kilo overweight kid, and I'll have a 50-year-old guy with injuries, and I'll have a 20-year-old kid who's like an elite athlete, all in the same class. Yeah. So I don't just go, okay, all of you do this. Yeah. Right. Okay. If I see that, then I go, all right, guys, so this is the movement that we'll look at tonight. Sometimes I choose like a more technique driven night. Yeah. A more, typical drilling, like put your hand here, step by step. Here's a scissor sweep, right? For example, like hold your collar here, hold this like this, and I'll take them through it. Yeah. And sometimes we will drill lots, especially if it's absolute beginners who don't know anything. Yeah. Right. And the majority of them, we got a lot of new people, and then, I change the whole class to suit the new people. Right. And then while they're doing that, I'll be like, okay, a few minutes later, I'll be like, all right, you guys got that, keep doing this. And I'll grab everybody else and I go, okay, most of you are competent at this already, so like, let's have a look at this, yeah? Or I'll get them starting to drill with it, or like live roll with it and stuff like that, and ask me questions about it. So I'm changing the class up constantly based on who's in the class, and I don't want to teach the same way every day. Every single warm-up is completely different. The guys have no idea what they're walking into every day. Some days it's going to be super hard. Some days it's going to be like really mellow. Sometimes it's lots of drilling. Sometimes it's just play. Sometimes, and like, they love it, right? And as a coach, it's fresh for me, like when they turn up, they don't go, oh, fuck, it's like, I know exactly what's going to happen today. We're going to run around the room. We're going to do some sit-ups. We're going to do push-ups, then we're going to drill. And it's like, no, you don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. Right. So some days I'll be like, I'll have a quick look, because everyone lines up the start of class. I'll have a quick look at the class, and then I decide based on who's there. Is it all reasonably experienced people? In which case, okay, guys, right, this is how we're going to approach the class today. Yeah. It'll probably still be on subject, because we generally have like a subject for the week or a subject for the month or whatever. But it's not set in stone as to what we're going to do. I write in my diary kind of in advance what I'd like to do, but I'm open to change. Yeah. And if the guys are not getting the movement, if they're not understanding it as quickly as some other movements, then we'll stay on that longer until they're all comfortable. Yeah. And then I'll be like, all right, now it's time to move. For example, we'll do something like maybe hip bump sweep, for example, and everybody picks it up really fast, like first class. Yeah. Everyone's like catching each other with it, in their free training immediately afterwards and things like that. And so I might go, okay, we just need one more class on this. Everyone's kind of got it. Awesome. We can move on, or sometimes we'll do something where they're struggling, and I might have penned it into my diary for us to do for a week or two, but it ends up being like a whole month of that particular subject. Yeah. So, I'm very open to new ideas, and of course I saw the ecological stuff come up. Another thing that a lot of people probably don't think about is the changes in human beings and the way that we think, right? And so the generation now who's grown up with iPhones and smartphones and things like that, the like addicted to social media generation, who by their nature have shorter attention spans, and because what they went through at quite a young age with the whole COVID thing and stuff like that, like they might be very resistant to the traditional teaching model of repetition. Yeah, because their brain is different than our brain, and most of you now, older people like me in their 50s or older, or 40s or whatever, who are starting to spend more time on their phone. I mean, I have to for my business anyway, but you'll notice, if you haven't already, a change in the way that you think, the change, like you might become more impatient, for example, and stuff like that. So it's definitely changing. There's numerous. I mean, I spent 10 hours this week watching stuff on Huberman to do with learning and the dangers of iPhones and all this sort of stuff, right? I'm really interested in all this stuff. A lot of my students are getting bullied online. I want to understand what that looks like. I want to understand what people are doing to try and curb it. I'm interested in solutions. I have direct contact with like all the parents of the kids that I'm coaching, so I want the parents to recognize that like this is a really dangerous tool that they're putting in their kids' hands. I'm not telling them how to parent. All I'm doing is saying, hey, there's statistics on this and it's not looking good, so be cautious. Yeah, right? Because the kids coming to me who have this issue and that issue and the other learning thing and stuff like that, a lot of it is, in line with what they're finding as the results of like a lot of screen time and things like that. So it's just something to be aware of, that over the generations and even within 10 years or 5 years, the brains of people are changing. And so the way that you are coaching needs to adjust. And so maybe the ecological approach, for example, really suits a modern generation who don't want to listen to parents, who are kind of rebellious, who maybe don't have the attention span to be able to sit there and knock out 150 to 100 reps of one particular movement. Maybe they get very bored very easily. So like the ecological approach really suits their mentality. Maybe they're just rebellious teenagers or post-teenage kids who are like, screw adults, I don't want to do it. A lot have been through like this garbage school system that most of us will accept as pretty outdated and was a model really designed for people who couldn't even read and write. Now you've got kids on iPhones at 4 or 5 years old who can operate stuff better than we can, and they're turning up to school, 5, 6, 7, 8, when they're like 10 years old, 11, 12 years old. Like that outdated school system is just like way behind them. Yeah, like they are bored. I was terribly bored at school. I hated this. I'm like, I got it the first time you said it. Like, why do we have to like chant it over and over like we're dummies for like the next 10 minutes? I get it. I just wanted to be outside doing things. So like, I was a hyperactive kid. I hated sitting down. I still do. Like, hence why the martial arts is perfect for me as a coach, because I'm moving all the time. I'm very active. And so at school, I really struggled to sit down. I was hyperactive. I was very, very good in some subjects and terrible on others. Maths was horrific. I'm basically numerically dyslexic. My brother is dyslexic, right? So he's amazing at numbers, hopeless with words for the most part, not great at communication, but loves numbers. So like, we got the opposite in each other, which is interesting. But understanding who your audience is, understanding who it is that's in front of you, if most of my class is like in their 40s and 50s and they have injuries, then I'm not going to be getting them murdering each other early on, and it's not a strict rule where they can only drill for the first 3 months. I encourage it. I encourage more practice, more drilling, more understanding of the techniques. And I think that people get bored very easily. The new generation gets bored very easily. So they're gonna find like sitting there and paying attention and trying to drill the same movement over again, they're going to find that very challenging. So I think that they're going to find and even the gi no gi thing, like, you know, like an ecological approach to like gi training, you know, with the huge prevalence of no gi, where there's like less connection points, there's bigger gaps between movements, for example, which a lot of people really like, you know, like I personally think that it tends, there's pros and cons, right? So the upside of starting no gi and rolling no gi is that you feel like flow earlier, yeah, because there's less hindrance, there's, you know, obviously less connection points, there's less friction, and so you can kind of move and flow and stuff like that, and you get to kind of feel and slide around each other more, so you develop that sensation of flow earlier. Also, because there's like less techniques and less positions and stuff like that, then you tend to go through the same position over and over and over more frequently because of that flowy, fast kind of thing. So you come across problems more frequently and have to solve them more frequently. So I think that you can get a sense of competence faster doing no gi. But the problem is that we wear clothing. Every street fight I've ever been in, people grab clothing, tear it across, pull your jacket over your head, smack you in the face, constantly grabbing. Like every time you come home after a fight and you have a shower, the back of your neck is always torn up by your t-shirt because the elastic gets ripped into, as soon as people grab your shirt, it slices around your neck. And you don't know it until you get home and have a shower and you're like, oh, gee, it hurts really bad, right? So clothing gets used in fights all the time. And if you're not used to it, you know, then it's a big, big problem, you know. So I'm a big believer in the more traditional model of gi first. Like we do exclusively gi training, unless it's really hot over summer, and then the guys will wear their no gi gear, you know, a little bit. But it's good to be overly paranoid about your neck and protecting your arms and understand the difference in someone gripping near your elbow and someone gripping halfway up your arm and someone gripping your shoulder. So all of those things are really important, I think, when it comes to jiu-jitsu and martial arts in general. It's why by far the majority of martial arts wear uniforms, is because we wear clothes in fights. Yeah, we don't walk around in no-gi gear, we don't walk around in our Speedos, and it's not all slippery and slidey in a fight. It's just not. Yeah, it's gritty. People are grabbing clothing, they're grabbing ears, you know, like people are grabbing whatever they can to control the person and try and smash them either with their head or their hands or knee them in the balls or whatever it happens to be. And it's not this flowy, slidey thing. And I think that a lot more people need to be punching each other in the face a lot more to really understand what martial arts is about and what I think jiu-jitsu is designed for. That's my opinion, and it's just my opinion. You can disagree, I don't care, it doesn't matter. But when it comes to the idea of training people, then I think that it's very important to understand, because I think it's too easy for young athletic guys to misunderstand and not even have an awareness of what a 40-year-old guy feels like. Yeah, they've got no clue, right? People look at me, I look really fit and healthy, and I am pretty fit and healthy, but they can't see all my injuries on the inside of my skin. They can't see when I'm standing there that I'm receiving pain signals from half a dozen different parts of my body. And if I'm wrestling, if I'm rolling, pretty much 99% of my attention is on myself because of all my pain and where I'm moving. And I'm always thinking about every movement I go to make. I have to analyze, like, is it going to injure some part of my body? Yeah. Is my shoulder, am I able to do it? And like, that's pretty much all I think about when I'm rolling. So it's quite common. I get to the end of a roll with someone, they're like, oh, what do you think? And I'm like, unless it's one of my students and I'm specifically rolling with them to like help them out and stuff. But if I'm having a roll with like another high grade guy, then pretty much all of my attention is on my own injuries and not so much on the other person, you know, which is far less than ideal, but it's what I'm stuck with. So I think that it's very easy for athletic young guys, specifically doing no gi, where there's a lot of flowiness and stuff like that, to really, really like an ecological approach. But I don't think that having an ecological approach to jiu-jitsu, or like the whole idea of like drilling is wrong. I'm sure it's clickbaity stuff. Being different these days is really popular. It gets you a lot of clicks. People want to have like dangerous titles and crap like that to make themselves popular or to get their point across. So that's fine. But I just think that like poo-hooing what has made thousands of world champions and some of the very, very best guys in the world the best at what they do. Yes, there's a new guy who's, I can't even remember his name, who claims to have never drilled ecological approach 100%, and he just won a whole bunch of tournaments, big tournaments, might have won the worlds and stuff like that. Well, that's an outlier, right? And there's outliers everywhere. I'm sure there's gi guys that have never drilled too, right? Yeah, unlikely, but like, just because one person does something doesn't mean that like that's the total approach for everybody. Yes, it shows that it's possible, but he's also a super young, athletic guy. If he's high-level competitor, he's probably juiced to the gills as well. So there's a number of factors involved in the success of this one particular person. Yeah, genetics, how wealthy his parents are possibly, so he can just train all the time, doesn't have to get a real job, doesn't have to work. I don't know, right? I'm just guessing here, but I'm just saying that there's more than just one factor involved in somebody's success. And what you really want to see, if there is a new style of teaching that's really superior, it's going to show itself. Yeah, and it's going to show itself because you're going to start seeing a lot of competitors either deciding to start adapting to that style of learning, or of course, now that it's becoming more popular, just through basic numbers, as it becomes more popular, there's going to be more people heading into tournaments with that ecological approach who are more likely to find success as well. All right, that's obvious, right? The question is, are those people all very similar? Are they young, athletic, probably full of juice, right? And able to train all day, right? But like, that's not my goal. My goal is not to train or to have a system that benefits only one type of person. And I've said it for decades while I'm teaching. I want to have a big army. That's the whole goal, in my opinion, is to have as big an army as possible, right? So like Gracie Academy's approach with Gracie combatives and like no rolling and stuff like that, and working your way into the art very slowly with like a long-term plan, thinking 10 years ahead, like this is where I want to be, and planning out a path to get there. I think it's really smart. Is it the only way? No, right? But I like to learn from everybody. So there's stuff that Henna and the guys do that I think is absolutely incredible, and I'll steal some of those ideas. And then there's ideas that maybe Andre Gaval, will use, and I'll steal some of that. Like, I'm a huge fan of Pedro Sauer. He's one of my favorite coaches, and I consider us like reasonably good friends. And so like, I love his approach, which is to be a sponge, be open to everything, don't knock anything, just be open, and so, hey buddy, so if something works, great. If it doesn't work, well, learn it anyway, have it in your pocket, because you might meet somebody who really needs that, and you can help them. So I think a lot of today's younger generation are quite selfish. I mean, they've grown up that way, like they're insulated on their phone. They're not a fan of conflict. They're not particularly good at socializing because they've grown up, the post COVID lockdown pandemic kids are, got all sorts of issues. I mean, all of us suffered, I mean, some of us have like long lasting stuff to do with that, right? So you imagine like being a kid growing up in that. Everyone's wearing masks and you can't go anywhere, and the government says this and you can't do that, and you can't go to the playground. Like, that's ridiculous, right? You can't go to the beach. People have been arrested for surfing in the middle of the ocean by themselves, It was a crazy time. But don't discount what's come out of that, yeah? The changes in thinking, the changes in attitude, the molding of the younger generation as a result of that, as a result of all the technology, as a result of all the time on their phone. There's kids spending up to like 15 hours a day on their phone. and like it's really, really hindering development, especially socially. Yeah, so don't discount the effect of all these different things on the people who then tend to like something like the ecological approach. Yeah. So, as I said, like I think variety is the key. I think being able to understand and provide for individuals and not just see everybody as like this is what we do here, like it or lump it. If you like it, stay. If you don't like it, bugger off, right? Okay, so that's not my goal. My goal is to try and find a way of coaching every single person that comes through the door. And if I've got 100 people in a room, then I'm going to have 10 coaches with me, and I'll assign the coaches to particular groups. I'll group people up according to their needs, and then they'll get coached and led on a path that's suitable for them. So I'm very, very big on this sort of stuff. I spend a lot of money on my coaches, and as we move forwards, I'm happy to pay all of my coaches really super well because I want them to take it professionally. I want them to take it seriously. I want them to do an amazing job. A lot of the stuff, a lot of the research that I come across that I learn from, I pass on to my coaches so that they can listen to it, they can read it, they can learn from it, and they can pass on the lessons that I'm learning so that we can be better coaches. So ultimately, that's the goal, is for us to help as many people as possible, whether they're autistic, whether they've got ADHD, whether they're 13 years old and overweight, whether they're 45, 50, 60 years old and they haven't done exercise in 10 years. Regardless, I want to be able to provide a safe, effective and fun and challenging environment for them. And personally, I don't think it lies in just one particular methodology. I think it's really important to like, I've studied it. As I said, I listened to like, I don't know, 8 hour or longer, maybe 12 hours of audiobook the other day, all about the ecological approach and the science behind it. And it was interesting because obviously the guy's very, very super science driven and he's very data driven. And so, like, again, like, that's his mindset. So of course he's going to like going towards something that's very sciencey and being proven and all these sorts of things. Yeah. So I don't have a hard and fast rule about any of that. I want to make jiu-jitsu fun for everybody. And I want as many people doing it as possible. And I think that lies in being open-minded and also trying to tailor people's jiu-jitsu journey according to their body and their mind, and understanding them really well. So for all the people, if Mr. Ecological guy out there, I don't diss ecological training at all. I think that if you're just rubbishing 100 years of drilling in the jiu-jitsu community, then that's kind of a little ridiculous too. What works for you doesn't work for others, and that's totally cool. Yeah, like you found something that you really vibe with, and that's awesome. But you know, there's many ways to learn jiu-jitsu, and this is just another. And I think understanding that if you are going over the same position over and over, then you are drilling, yeah, whether you see it or not. So yeah, anyway, that's my thoughts on that, is to make training suit the individual as much as possible, understand the people who are in front of you, understanding the changes from, it used to be from generation to generation, but like literally every couple of years now, there's a technological innovation that's changing our mind and our bodies and the way that we think and the way that we learn. And so understanding that the people coming to you are being changed by this technology and it's affecting the way that they learn and the way that they think. And yeah, I think that's what makes a good coach, is that you're constantly learning and paying attention to the change in the humans that you're training, and keep it fun, have a lot of variety in their training. Again, enough, it's like relationships. You want to have enough similarities that you can connect and enough differences that you find the other person interesting. If your partner is exactly the same as you would drive each other crazy. You would be boring and terrible, right? Okay. And if you're complete opposites, then you're probably not going to gel. So I think it's important to have enough similarities. So have enough consistency, whether it's ecological or whether it's like drilling, whatever floats your boat, have enough similar stuff so that they feel competent and can move forwards, but have enough variety that there's things that challenge them and that it keeps the training interesting every day. Like my guys turning up to class tomorrow morning have no idea what I'm going to do. Yeah. I mean, they've seen what I've written on the board for the week, but when I get in there, I'll have a quick glance at everyone that's turned up. If everyone's over 45 and it's cold in the morning, then we're not going to be going spastic, because like that's just injury just waiting to happen. Oh, speaking of that, Mr. Ecological mentioned warming up as a waste of time. So I'm guessing that he's young, I'm guessing that he's athletic, and I'm guessing that he's going to come from a warm climate where you don't really have to warm up or feel the need to, right? But if it's cold, you want to warm up, yeah? You can't just go, warm-ups are rubbish, yeah? They serve a function, for sure. And it's really interesting, for example, training, with the top guys, like, Hickson guys and Pedro and everybody like this, like understanding just a basic hip out movement that like 99.999% of all people do wrong. If the warm up is just to warm your body up, yeah, and you're not using jiu-jitsu movements, like you can have like the way I design, if we're going to do like a proper warm up, for example, I've got a lot of new people, for example, so I won't start necessarily with a jiu-jitsu warm up because they don't know what we're doing. So if I have a lot of new people, then you'll have a general warm-up, things that they already do. They can already walk, so you can walk or jog around the room a little bit, move your arms in circles. Like you do stuff that their body already knows how to do. So to design a class, I don't want to say correctly, but I guess scientifically, is you do a general, non-specific warm-up first, so that might be 10 minutes or so. Then you go to a sport-specific one. So then once your body's warm with movements that it can already do, that it's already competent at, you move into an area, now that your body's kind of moved, your neural system's woken up, you're not sitting in the car anymore, yeah? Right? You might have been sitting at your desk all day, you've sat in your car to get to training, you've been sitting there a whole day, and then you're supposed to walk in and just like perform. No, your body needs to realize it's not doing that anymore. So you do a general warm-up with stuff it can already do, then you move towards a sport-specific warm-up, right? And that might be hip outs, that might be forward rolls, that might be backward rolls, and maybe some bridging type movements, right? More specific to jiu-jitsu. Then you move into, then you move into the actual jiu-jitsu itself. So your nervous system's been woken up, and then it's been learning to do new movements. And then what you're going to do when you're drilling suits those movements. Then if you roll later, you like slowly raise everybody's body temperature up. I hate seeing people do a hard warm up. Everyone gets really sweaty. Then they drill, their body temperature drops, and then they roll. There's nothing worse. There's nothing that's going to guarantee injuries like that system. And I see it in a lot of gyms, right? You want people's body temperature to be slowly rising, and when it reaches its peak is when they're rolling, and then you have a little warm down. Yeah, you can stretch then if you want. I usually get people, if it's cold, I usually get people to let them stretch at home so they can get home while they're still warm, have a hot shower or whatever, and do their stretching at home. Over summer, when it's still warm, we'll stretch at the club, but I think about all of these things when I'm designing my class. The temperature, who's in the class, what are their ages, what are their injuries, all this sort of stuff. So like that nice crescendo is kind of what you're after, yeah? So that if your warm-up is really hard and people are drenched in sweat and then their body temperature is dropping for their drilling, their body is just cooling down and cooling down and cooling down. The gi or the clothing is wet, right? So that's cooling them down more. And then grab a drink of water, we're going to roll. And their body is like kind of stiff and cold and wet and not in the place that you want it for optimum rolling. And there was a school I trained at for a couple of years. same warm-up every day, same hard warm-up every single day. Then they would drop into drilling for half an hour, 40 minutes, and then expect everyone to roll at a really high intensity. And the injury rates that I saw in that school was through the roof. Yeah, like I hated training there because like I could feel what was happening to my body, and seeing the injuries that everybody else was getting, it terrified me, right? But I wasn't in a position to really say anything because it's not my school, so I kind of went along with it. But I would be, you know, I just knew, I could see what was happening, and it's just horrific, you know. So yeah, so don't do that. Like that's asking for trouble, you know. Like gradually warm people up, yeah, so that they reach, you know. So you'll start off, you do your like little drilling thing. Again, it's really laid back, relaxed, and then you move into your drilling or your ecological approach. You slowly warm up and slowly do this sort of stuff, you know, and you slowly increase the intensity of the drilling or movement or play or whatever it happens to be, yeah. And then you build up to the crescendo where now everybody's ready to roll and you can see it. And you know, like we'll usually put music on for that, so the vibe's really good, and then they can roll and they do timed rounds and now they're doing their thing. And then, you know, I'll start turning the music down after like say 40 minutes. All right, guys, now jog around the room, do 5 laps around the room, you know, slowly bring your heart rate down, relax a little bit. Because especially if they're training at night, if you just leave them in that heightened state and send them home, like they'll probably find it hard to sleep. Yeah, and that's not going to be good. That's not helping their recovery. That's not helping them at work the next day. So bringing their heart rate down a little bit, letting them jog around the room, let them chat and socialize a little bit, which is super important. It's why most people are there. Giving them freedom and opportunity to sit down, stretch pretty casually and relax and calm down and let everything settle, and then they're ready to go home. Yeah, so a lot goes into good coaching. And anyway, that's quite a long video, and I just hope that everyone out there can avoid injuries as much as possible, stay in jiu-jitsu for as long as they possibly can, and pass on the art as much as we can. Anyway, that's mine. Bye.